Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, hoping it's good. Welcome to the fourth day of Ashe Cultural Arts Center's series called Losing Louisiana, Land, People, and Culture. So we have had, three previous days of very rich discussion, around our local climate action plans, the films have been amazing, highlighting, the disparities that are happening inside of our communities at the zip code level, talking about the experience of our neighbors in East Baton Rouge and St. James and these other parishes that are being ravaged by the toxic chemical companies. Figuring out where art and culture, really has a place in helping us figure out the solutions and shining a light on these issues for the larger community and helping us to see where we have a role in making these changes that we are wanting and needing in our neighborhoods. And yesterday was a very important conversation about how to link our efforts across the diaspora. We got to meet and experience folks from Kenya who are doing a lot of the same kinds of work that we're doing, who are using art and culture, the power of the youth. We talked a lot about creativity and imagination inside of a space that, is really more usually thought of for scientists, that is their domain. But we're saying, now as community folks, artists are our trusted messengers, and how do we, link the science and the art? So for today's conversation, all of that kind of culminates here. And I have with me, I am Asali Devon Ecclesiastes. I'm the CEO at Ashe Cultural Arts Center. And thank you so much for sharing this time with us and for helping us to think through these kinds of important issues, guiding us towards what kind of art and action you want to see from us. And so Nari Ramsey, who's the executive director of the Ujima Economic Development Corporation, a local organization that is very close to my heart and spirit and doing amazing and wonderful work in the Claiborne corridor, in Treme 7th Ward, 8th Ward, all of those places that we know of to not just be the heart of our community, but also experiencing all of the disparate impacts. So Nari is going to tell us how she's been connecting residents and neighbors to solutions. And then we have the honor of having Larry Williams Jr., who I just met yesterday on the call, but his insights, he is Sierra Club's labor, I don't want to get your title wrong, I know labor coordinator. So listen to that, right? And connecting the labor to the environmental cause, and talking about how our the resource of our time, the resource of our bodies and our experience is also extracted, in the same ways that the environment is. And so, how do we, change the frame so that we're addressing these issues simultaneously? And so, Nari, I would love to start with you, if that's okay.
That's wonderful. Good to meet you, Mr. Williams, and glad to be here. Ashe is certainly one of the great pillars of light and hope for the community, and so it's always good to see you all convening these types of conversations. They're also very advanced, so we're on live. Hi, this is my first
You're
live.
live.
Hey. So I'm sorry. I've done fake live when you do Facebook Live when it first came out when you was at events, but this is my first presentation. So thank y'all for inviting me into this space to share with you. We do have a presentation. We put together a deck, and I do know that, time is of the essence, so I do apologize for that. One goal that I kind of had for you all was that my deck couldn't be longer than 30 pages, so make sure that I stayed under 30 minutes. It's weird, but it's also very text heavy. We tend to really love words, and the other things, we love is documents. I have all kind of stuff with me because I was ready for y'all, but Morgan's gonna do the presentation on the deck and kind of just guide us through, and I'll do my best to move along quickly in respect of everyone's time, but just also kind of zero in on some of the highlights. So what's exciting for me about participating in this conversation that you called it, the solutions piece, right? And so you all have been talking about how we're losing, but where are the wins? So this is an opportunity for us to kind of talk about the wins that we've had and where we see we can continue to have those wins. So I think it was important for you all to add that component to this bigger conversation on Louisiana and how we can be innovative. And like you said, the imagination, right? Without the vision, so it's important to set forth the vision, in a way that's winning, in a way that's well, in a way that's holistic. So all those threes, we take those threes. So Morgan, if you wouldn't mind kind of pulling up the presentation for us, and we'll move through it a little bit quickly. So again, I'm here to represent and talk about the Cultural Innovation District, which is a built environment demonstration of equity and justice. And our partners in this space are the City of New Orleans through the Department of Capital Projects and the Foundation for Louisiana. And so this is kind of a very wonderful picture of where we are. So what Asali didn't share is that this kind of work began in her wheelhouse at the City of New Orleans prior to her moving on to Ashe. And so I will add this, they kind of asked her to talk about the space and how wide it would be. And it could be a block, it could be 4 blocks. And she said, well, why can't it be the whole space? So we have a whole space of how we can really think about our creativity, our innovations for new and improved built environment. And so the span is actually about 19 to 25 blocks underneath the interstate. What you see on the far right of that picture is a roundabout, which used to be on Claiborne Avenue before the interstate. And so part of the visioning that community had was, let's put the roundabout back. So that is 19 blocks between basically Canal Street and St. Bernard, which are the hearts of the culture for New Orleans on Claiborne Avenue. The additional blocks that you don't see in this diagram expand from St. Bernard to Elysian Fields. So what was important for this project is to certainly involve those businesses and those residents in that space in this visioning process. And also think about the green space that we do have, because in that particular area, the oaks were not demolished. So you still have your oak trees, you still have your green space. And also the green you do see on this diagram in terms of is an area called Hunter's Field, which we all know is a treasure and a really iconic place in terms of the wealth of community, in terms of the rebellious spirit of community, and certainly in terms of the inspirational aspects that New Orleans has to offer. And that was being led by, our father, our leader, Jerome Smith, through Tambourine and Fan, and all the wonderful activations he did with young people utilizing green space. He also, of course, utilized green space via Armstrong Park, which is another area that, was a built environment, but not really built with community in mind. And so community via Tambourine and Fan continued to take it over. So Mr. Smith would take the young people through Tambourine and Fan. They would learn about plants and trees and the history of Congo Square, through his programming. So connecting young people to their environment, to their already green culture is something that, Tambourine and Fan did really well. And so we do kind of highlight that throughout the project.
Nari, would you mind mentioning real quick, you touched upon the destruction of the oaks, but could you give some context about that?
Oh, sure, Sally, I can give some context about that. And I apologize, I'm trying to move real quick for you all. But as you all know, again, what makes this project so very, very important and really a demonstration of equity and justice, because the reason why we're doing work here is because what used to exist there no longer existed. So when the country decided that they were going to put an interstate, particularly in the city of New Orleans, there was a decision on where to put it. And the community, the brown and Black community, lost out on that. And so what happened is that, and this happened actually throughout the country, as you all know. So Interstate I-10 went through the Mecca of New Orleans commerce in terms of Black people. So there were over 300 Black-owned businesses along Claiborne Avenue in this stretch that were displaced, ultimately closed, would never be able to return. And then of course there was just a wonderful span of oak trees that were also in this space that were, was it over 300 trees as well? I mean,
they estimate between 300 and 500, 300 on the low end, but they say that it was the longest stand of live oaks in North America.
Now, how about that?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so this is where we have to, again, put our creativity and our visioning at work. And we, in this field, we call it our heart work, because what was there is not there. And so you're asking community to think about how they can rebuild after a devastation, right? Because they were able to utilize this wonderful green space. We have one elder who was part of our neighborhood advisory committee, talk about how her family would go and name the trees. So they had a certain ownership about the oak trees, and they cared for them because they were theirs. So could you imagine a whole community of folks, leaving their homes and going to Claiborne Avenue to tend for trees and green space, right? One of the things that I heard actually on another Zoom that touched on kind of the resiliency initiative was talking about how we want to kind of replace this culture, not replace, we want to add to the culture of green infrastructure in a way that people appreciate it. So it's not foreign to think about bioswales. It's not foreign to think about, pavable, permeable pavement or anything like that, but it's just part of the culture. And all I could think about was, guess what? It was the culture. If people are talking about caring for oak trees on Claiborne Avenue, that's not a new concept, for our communities to know how to care about green space. So it's a culture that exists. We're looking to reinvigorate it. I just kind of wanted to say that for the record, because we're on live. Hey, y'all. But so again, this is just a very, a picture of what's present in all of the space that we can touch and activate. Next slide, please, Morgan. So again, we talked about what was and what is. So we wanted to certainly let you see what was, right? So yeah, that's about 300 to 500 trees right there. And then you see what is, right? So the devastation was real. Okay, so our goal is to, as we say, remedy the impact of this monster, which is what the community called the interstate. And so we have some really wonderful ideas of how to do that based on community input. The other part that's important to just, say, because we are in this era of COVID-19, right? We're in this era of pandemic. And so we do know that our project will allow us to be responsible in terms of how we think through this pandemic, because we can't be indoors the way we used to be. So how we redesign the space and welcome an open market and welcome people back to Claiborne Avenue is also going to be important, because we want people to utilize outdoor spaces in a very responsible way. And social distancing is what we've identified as the way to do that. Well, where does that exist? If you can't social distance in your house, we can have a built environment that allows for social distancing. So those are just the two bullets that were highlighted on top. Next slide, please, Morgan. So again, what makes this project very important is we're guarding against the displacement of residents, small businesses, and entrepreneurs, because this has already happened. We've pulled together the input of everyone in the community. The Claiborne Corridor encompasses 13 neighborhoods. We're focusing on a strip of land that was impacted by bad investment and recovering it by making good investments. And we got that information from the Livable Claiborne Community Study that is a precedent to this work. And of course, we know, again, as I said before, the CSD serves as an opportunity to address the issues presented by COVID-19 and to halt that widening economic divide, because we're allowing for the marketplace to kind of happen in a natural and organic way. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry that you all can't see all of that. I did tell y'all I was text heavy in the beginning of this conversation, but we wanted to kind of give you all a timeline, because it's important to kind of frame this work and to let you know it didn't start with us, but we are excited about continuing it, right? So community has always known that they have a place in commerce, they have a place in culture. And so what we wanted to show in this diagram in terms of just the timeline is the different ticks of what has happened. And so again, really quickly, in the 1800s, right, at the beginnings of New Orleans, a marketplace existed in this very area. So that's exciting for us when it comes to revisiting the concept of a marketplace, because it's not new, and it's one that was successful. Then we know that the I-10 came in the 1960s and devastated a thriving Black commercial corridor. But guess what? Community responded again, because that's what community does. And early on in the 70s, not long after the I-10 went up, they came up with a plan of how they can do something to kind of mitigate the impact of the interstate by recognizing commerce, under the interstate, right? So now you have a automatic canopy. You've created shade in this particular area, which is why New Orleans still gravitates to Claiborne Avenue in such a way. But let's use it. Let's use it to our advantage. And so that went to the mayor in the 1970s, but it stopped. It kind of stalled. It did not get the opportunity to move forward, but that's okay because we got it again. So I'm a fast forward now, early 2000s, the 99 to the 2000s, as they say out here in New Orleans, right? And so thank God that the city decided to pick up this project again. And so you saw again kind of investments, in this idea. And again, as something that should have been invested in beforehand, now you had Hurricane Katrina. So it made sense to think differently about spaces and what's available to you. And so the fact that the mayors thought to take a look at this again is how the Mayor's Office of Economic Development put together another study, then moved to 2013, the Livable Claiborne Community Study that I talked about earlier, right? So this is now from just idea to actually community input. And that's really what makes this project so special. So in 2013, you're looking at all of the people who are trying to get back to New Orleans, all of the people who are now in New Orleans, really coming together to kind of focus on this sacred space because it is a great opportunity and we don't want to miss the opportunity. And so, little behold, new mayor, we're going to take this opportunity another step forward. And guess what? We're going to establish an office that focuses on economic opportunity. And now we're going to look specifically at how Black people need to be involved in this space. And so here you go, and this is the work between Asali, Ashley Gardere, and where they kind of really took the Livable Claiborne Community Study and turned it into something even better and had another series of charrettes and conversations with community to make sure that they were on the right track. And guess what? They were on the right track because in 2017, the federal government gave you what, an $800,000 grant. Okay, so they were on the right track. They bubbled it up to the people who could make the investment because these were the people who made the first investment, right? The government came and put the interstate there. And so now the city of New Orleans said, government, come help us repair this. And the government acted properly. And so that's why those are the three things that are highlighted on this timeline. So you had the federal government doing their act. You had the state government coming in and doing their act in terms of, making sure that there was a responsible relationship. So you had your joint use agreement between the city, the state, and your federal government saying, guess what? Yes, we want you to use this place and we're going to allow you to use it for 20 years. And what's important?
Can I interject there and say this is where culture is important? So like that's all of that federal and state and local. But the reason we got a 20-year agreement is because I'm from the 7th Ward and I'm disgusting. And once, once I want something, then I'm gonna bother you till you do it. And I would go sit at their people's desk. You remember going to drive to Baton Rouge, Nari, over this 20 years? Well, so the joint use agreements are usually 5 years. But because we was coming with all of our Claiborne corridor energy, we got a 20-year agreement because they don't want to see us every 5 years. So culture gets it done.
Culture gets it done. And for the local level, culture stood up and came to the council meetings to say why this is important. Because before you have any kind of major agreement, your people got to come and represent. So big ups to culture for coming up and saying, no, we want this. Guess what? We've been wanting this. Now you all just got to do it. And here we are. So again, that's why those three things are highlighted because they all converge because it was with purpose and beautiful intent to really let culture tell their story. And the CID allows for that to happen, to tell their story through culture, through commerce, and of course, green, which we will get to in these slides momentarily. But I think the backdrop of the CID and the history of, of the folks who have been here and who are really committed to this work and sharing their stories is so important because that's how we were able to kind of push the project forward and keep it going forward. Now we're in, 2020 and the next great thing, to happen. We certainly know we celebrate our 300-year anniversary. And of course, we now have a female mayor. So all of these wonderful, exciting things are happening in the city of New Orleans while the Cultural Innovation District is building its legs, and building its arms and getting its strength together to really elevate all that it can and will do. And so what was exciting after we got the grant, after the city, folk came to the council meetings and, shared their stories and why this is important is to show and prove. And so part of the celebration for our 300-year anniversary was to do a demonstration phase. If we bring the market under the bridge in an organized and uniform way, will people respond? Will they come? Will they attend? Will they enjoy? And guess what? The answer is yes. And I should have put my Instagram 50-second video on, but that's okay. Next time it'll be in the next video. But long story short, this is the timeline. This is a 50-year reclamation project. And we're excited to continue to push forward and to usher it through. Next slide, please. Because this is all about equity in the city, and that's why we're pushing it through. Next slide, please. So quickly, it was important for you all to see, these are the CID investments. I highlighted the Economic Development Administration's investment because this was actually the first of its kind. So kudos to the work of everyone at the city who knew that we could apply for this grant. And now our time is to make good on that investment, to really do the work and start the construction to recoup it. Next slide, please. And why is this important? Because we did recognize racism as the meaning and the backdrop for why all of this stuff happens. And guess what? Thank you guys, because we're doing something about it. And I'm a visual person and I needed that visual. So this is what was the monster, right? What can policymakers do to mitigate that monster? Next slide, please. And this is what it can be, right? So we're talking about green infrastructure today. And again, this is an idea that was before us in the 1970s, where folks and community were already thinking about how to reprogram the space, how to kind of put back this green landscape that existed there. And we know since we had Hurricane Katrina and then the other storm in August, and now this year, what? I couldn't believe how many storms we had this year, but that's not our reality. So we have to prepare for life with water, and for life with water in sometimes very unexpected ways. So preparation is how you prepare. Next slide, please. So again, just highlighting all of the wonderful things of why this project was important, because of all of the different ways that it impacts community, but not just impacts community. This is what community wants. This is what community has asked for. And so we're excited to continue to do the work to help government and our good minds and our good government deliver. Next slide, please. I told y'all I was text heavy, so I apologize. But again, 2017, we did the charrettes, we did all of the outreach, we learned from community, how can we take the design team's idea, how can we take the Liverpool Claiborne community study and really turn it into something. And in 2018, we moved forward and had the innovation district. So we did the demonstration phase. 2019, we just did all of the other work outside, right? Because this is the inside and the outside game. So you're building capacity while at the same time, you're kind of getting folks ready for what can be. So we spent 2019 kind of helping to build capacity through affordable housing and some other initiatives. Next slide, please. And so one of the things from all of that building capacity was that MasterCard did research and gave us great data, because data is important to prove your point. So what did they see happen after our activations and all of this attention in the space? 130% increase. 137% increase. And forgive me, guys, I have the economic development hat on. So with numbers and data, I understand they're very, very important. I'm gonna get to the green. I promise I'm gonna get to the green. Right? But that was important to say that community is spending money. So this is a great place for investment. And site number 2, new stores were opening, right? Because if people are spending money, you're going to have new stores. If you're building capacity, you're going to have people who are equipped to now open new stores, to take their visionary ideas into brick and mortar, right? And so you see Garden of the Moors highlighted on there because that's one area where I'm going to focus in on the green. So I just wanted to, again, kind of give you the backdrop of the history, why the data is important, because the investment is there. There's 4 zones in terms of what we're looking at with the Coastal Innovation District. There's the Garden of the Moors, there's Back of Town Plaza, there's Tambourine and Fan, and there's Spirit Circle. So I showed you the diagram in the front. You can see now where the roundabout is, okay? And Garden of the Moors is where we actually are able to kind of think about green infrastructure and water retention in the biggest way. And so I wanted to start there. The next place I talk about is Back of Town Plaza, because that's where the marketplace is. And those will be the 2 places that I highlight for the rest of this presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, so what do all of these different areas represent, and how do we kind of highlight them and why? So when we talk about the Garden of the Moors, we know that we're connecting New Orleans to kind of its iconic history, right? So we talk about French influence, and we talk about Spanish influence, but guess what? African influence is a big deal. It's kind of a very big deal. And so it's important to talk about that. And community said, let's talk about that. So that's part of the master plan visioning. Even more exciting is that we know from our African cultures, they were managing water way back when, right? So this is not new, but this is a resurgence and kind of another way to energize what we know of old. And so we have the Sankofa model that we take it from the back and we move it forward. And so this is a way for us to kind of salute our African architecture. There'll be stormwater management in terms of how we can create water gullies and just different ways to capture it and have canals that showcase water. You see fountains all over. Well, guess what? We can put fountains under the bridge. And that's the exciting part about that particular area. The green space really focused for us is in the back of town space because we have the Lafitte Greenway on one side and we have another park on the other side. And so that's a way that we're gonna, again, utilize space in terms of our relationship to the green that's already in existence and bring in the commerce. So I'll just use New York as an example, Central Park, right? You have parks and you have merchants. Here we go. So we're ready to kind of utilize the marketplace in that way under the bridge for the back of town plaza. Of course, I talked about Tambourine the Fan and Baba Duck, and so we had to pay homage to his wonderful work with young people. And so that will be an area that kind of focuses on youthful entrepreneurial spirit. And some of our charrettes, the young people said they wanted a city hall, right? So if we know that the JUA is 20 years, a generation, right? So think about the impact that we have on young people, not only helping to build the CID, but thinking about their space and time and government if they want to see a city hall under the bridge. So that's exciting for us. And the final spot in terms of spirit circles, again, how can we continue to pay homage to the spirit that came before us and what we will continue to see, and to really set aside space under the bridge to highlight that. For anyone who has been along Claiborne Avenue, you see that a lot of the pillars and the columns already have artwork on them. They already kind of celebrate the story of New Orleans. And so we wanted to utilize this space to continue that storytelling aspect that we can make use of under the bridge. Next slide. So the green, and this is in purple because that's just to keep your mind focused. This is the Garden of the Moors area. So these are all wonderful, wonderful ways that we know we can utilize technology, the science, to save ourselves, to be prepared for how we will live a life with water. So we have the concrete pavers and the greenscape and the flagstones, and these are just images of what can be the space under the bridge, and how do we kind of pull in these different built environments that we see everywhere. And so what was exciting about the resiliency grant, and certainly their promotional materials, is they showed this work happening throughout the city. Well, guess what? It can happen under the bridge, and you got permission, y'all. Y'all got 20 years, but y'all not gonna do it 20. We're gonna get this done in at least 5 to 10, okay? Because our babies need to see it sooner. But
can I say something at that point, Nairi? Because right, a lot of these ideas, as you were mentioning, came up with residents as part of this process, and now, which is now what, like 2017 is when we did all of those charrettes. And just since that time, we've seen some of these interventions come up in other communities, but still not be realized in this space. So just wanted to.
And and kudos to the work of groups like Groundwork NOLA. I know Angela Chalk was on one of your panels, with WaterWise. And so they are doing, like I said, it's an inside and an outside game. They're doing a lot of the capacity building and making sure people remember, because this is really about remembrance. Water is not new for New Orleans. But in terms of how we deal with it is important. There are some specific tools that you can use. And so thank you to them for kind of bringing that technology. And what this project does is to highlight it. So while things are happening and you're putting water barrels on your home, when you walk to Claiborne Avenue, you can see a water barrel. Like this, so these conversations will mirror each other and complement each other so that there's a space where you are not seeing, they're saying removing the gray, right? We're getting rid of the gray. And so this is a great landscape to get rid of the gray and to put in the green. Next slide, please. Again, with lighting, acoustic barriers, art and color. You talked to Sally again, about how culture is what makes this space so beautiful and how we are, doing different things. So adding art and color to the area under the bridge is important for this new space that we envision, and certainly how do we enhance what has already been there. Next slide. Again, these are the different themes that the community has come up with of how to activate this space in a way that's cognizant of the green infrastructure, in a way that kind of gives homage to what exists already and what we can put in to enhance our experience under the bridge. And this is what under the bridge looks like right now. So I talked to you a little bit about some of the iconic art that's already there and gives homage to, our wonderful culture. But then if you look at the top of this picture, that's the problem area, right? So the fact that we have this relationship with the Department of Transportation, and the city of how we can now fix that part too is very important. So I'm also excited to, have you all know that they agreed to work on the joist protectors to make sure that they're mitigating how water flows under the bridge. And that's important because no matter what we do on the bottom, they have to be responsible to us on the top. And I remember when we had our early visits with the district, some of them had never visited Claiborne Avenue, right? And so again, this remembrance, y'all can get it. It's already there. Next slide, please. And so again, talking about how we can take it to the next level. So you had art, but how can we now mitigate what it looks like on top? So yeah, they'll fix the storm order issues, they'll fix the joists, but how can we add our touches to it? How can we put a canopy? How can we put a lighting? You see the cafe to the right? So we're putting in the marketplace, we're making the space even more dynamic. So you're not only just using it to walk, but you're using it to do business and to improve your experience under the bridge. Next slide, please. So again, because I know Mr. Williams on the floor, so how much water? We're talking about 1.5 to 2 million gallons of water annually. That's huge if we know we're going to be dealing with storms every day. If we're putting in tree canopies and really thinking about how much area is can be impacted, 6.4 acres of green urban infrastructure, that's a lot of land. And that's a great opportunity for us. And of course, like we said before, the removal of the concrete will reduce the heat island effect. And we, of course, want to stay committed to the Complete Streets program that you see some of the activities happening throughout the city. Next slide, please. I told y'all I have the economic development hat on, so that's why you see numbers again. But just to remind you all, we got you. We got you green infrastructure in terms of Garden of the Moors. And when we look at Back of Town Plaza, we infused the green landscape again, but now we're talking about the commerce part, and that's important for this area. And so we have the proof of concept, we did the demonstration, and we're going to activate these EDA construction funds. Next slide, please. So next slide. So these are the different ways that we kind of get to do it. So again, talking about the traffic and pedestrian safety. So how can we now take advantage of the relationship that we have with the state to really manage how traffic flows, to slow it down so that people can utilize the space better? How can we think about noise? And what was exciting for me to learn during our charrettes and working with you all experts, Larry, is that, our greenery serves as sound barriers already. Right? So if we infuse the greenery back under the space and make it beautiful, then we can also mitigate the sound, and how people use the space can be more inviting to them in a different way. And of course, most important for this conversation is the flooding, the water, and the pollution, right? So how do we manage our relationship with the state in terms of how we have stormwater runoff? You said something, Sam? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We are paper, we would have handouts if this was an in-person conversation, but I had to put it all on this deck, so forgive me. But again, how can we reduce, like we said, the concrete, the paving, put in the biospheres, make the landscaping, and then get people to work. This resiliency grant is all about having folks work on green infrastructure. Well, guess what, y'all got 19 blocks of a wonderful place that you can landscape and a 20-year joint use agreement to do it. Kudos to this work, because it's all coming together. And I think, as your mayor said, I believe the press conference before that, this is really about impacting the next generation in a different way. So we have the relationship with green in terms of we see it, we know trees, right? We talked about communities that went and felt like they owned them and they cared for them. But guess what? You can get paid for this caretaking, right? And we can create another industry that's important for the city of New Orleans. Next slide, please. I told y'all I was text heavy. Keep going, keep going. Now is the time. Keep going, keep going. So I talked about what we already did, and this is kind of acclimate you to where we're going. So for this year, we were able to kind of begin the investment to activate the EDA grant by the city. Thank you, city. You know, they started with their 200,000 first CEA payment. And so that's able for us to kind of move our construction documents from 95% to 100%, which is what you want. You want 100% proof, you know, of all the designs that have been brought up by community. And so we're looking to break ground in 2021, you know, and to have, of course, the Mayor's Office of Cultural Economy, again, be responsive, you know, to that area, to, you know, welcome the space. And again, to kind of set the tone, because you're right, there is a cultural economy here, and the culture is how we're going to put this whole thing together. And we want to salute them and highlight them through this process. And then as we move into 2022, we have additional sponsors that are looking at this work. So we know that the EDA is looking to refund it. But again, how does the National Endowment for the Arts play into this? Because a lot of this is cultural and artwork and those type of renovations. And so that is another area for us to keep our forward thinking and our visioning and our creative planning folk, you know, really on task with the programming and the design. Next slide. And again, I apologize because it looks like things are off text, but we stay optimistic, right? We stay optimistic about how do we fund this? Because if we get the data, you got the people and the experts, so how does it work? And so this is, again, our way of thinking about how we can move forward with this. We know that there was a TIF in the United States for the first time in New Orleans through the Downtown Development District, and that's wonderful. You can see the improvements that have happened in downtown New Orleans. Well, this is an opportunity for us to do a similar trajectory, to have those same improvements, the same capacity building, particularly in New Orleans, cultural heartbeat on Claiborne Avenue. And I would be remiss if I did not shout out all the wonderful Black women mayors, you know, who are doing this work. And very excited to say that we have a woman, a Black woman mayor, you know, who is leading this wonderful work too. So again, kudos for her recognition in terms of being able to know that there are very special things that we can do in our community to save ourselves, you know, and to really just give kudos to all of the strength and energy that's happening throughout the country to pay attention to race and equity as we look at green infrastructure, because this is another part of that space that needs the attention and deserves the attention. So thank you all very much. And I apologize that I was very long, but Mr. Williams, that's the CID, Facebook Live, YouTube, wherever you are, this is us.
That was excellent. Really wonderful presentation and very inspiring. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know if I'm naming this correctly, but that looks like the vision of reverse gentrification that I think a lot of places in the United States need to be thinking about. It also reminds me of Seneca Village. A lot of people don't realize that Central Park in New York used to be 19th century, mostly Black landowners settlement that was, you know, taken and turned into a public space. And so how inspiring. Can I just ask, how much time do I have?
You can have as much time as you would like, Larry. We, you know, this is free flowing.
Okay,
So
that's great. I won't keep folks for too long, but you upped the game. So I, you know, while you were talking, I was like, let me pull out a presentation, see what I can do.
oh, good, yes.
And so I'm not sure. I think, well, first let me just let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you all see the presentation?
Oh yes, just transition.
All right, so you know, this is a bit more of a philosophical conversation that I'm about to start here, but I think it dovetails very nicely with you know, the conversation that was started previously. A lot of times when you talk about economic development, the conversation in the United States leaves out workers. You know, workers are, you know, the way that we get these projects done. This is how we keep our local economy going. And unfortunately, historically, there's always been an imbalance in the communities that get those jobs. And when we do get those jobs as Black and brown communities, our labor has historically been exploited. You know, we know cotton, sugar, whatever can be exploited will be exploited. And so I think what drives me is thinking through how to share with folks, you know, building the tools to build a movement of working people, that particularly those who are most impacted by development projects that, you know, skip their community, to make sure that work can be in their community and they can benefit from that. So that if that can go for from as far as Nairobi, Kenya, to, you know, Baltimore where I live, but, you know, thinking through how workers are going to be impacted is a part of community. And just transition, for those who don't know, the phrase was initially coined by, you know, this is the history that's been written, and I think we need to do more research, but workers who were with the atomic oil and chemical workers who believed that the industry that they worked in was, you know, dangerous and it was dirty, but they didn't think it should continue, but they wanted those workers to continue to have work. So that kind of dichotomy that's always drawn to say that workers don't care about the environment, it's just not true. Workers in Texas, New Orleans, they care about their community. They care about, you know, their loved ones and the health of their coworkers, but they also care about employment. And so the only way we're going to win the transition to a clean energy economy and bring along workers, have workers leading that, is to understand that you need to do both at the same time. It's not either or. Take care of workers, take care of the environment. I just want to double check so folks can see the presentation, correct? Okay, great. All right, so let's jump in. Okay, so different ends of the progressive, I'm starting from the upper left-hand corner here. Different ends of the progressive movement are faced with different challenges and concerns. So environmental groups, I took a quote from Aaron Mayer, the first Black president of Sierra Club. Workers should not be bearing the burden of the environmental costs. Environmental justice communities are already paying with their health, and then they lose their jobs. Just transition ensures a humane and civilized approach. So that's one definition of just transition. And I want to just note that the term itself, you know, I'm really trying to lead a movement to expand the definition of just transition to not just be talking about the typical groups of workers we think of, which is unionized older white men, maybe in West Virginia working in a coal mine. Okay, sure, we care about them as low-wage workers, but we also care about those brothers who have been locked up and sisters who have been locked up for 20 or 30 years over nonviolent offenses, and they come out and they can't get a job. What is the transition from that? People in Kenya asked me one time, you know, what will we transition from? What about the people who have never been a part of the traditional economy and essentially have nothing to transition from? So I think the conversation needs to be expanded to include groups of workers like gig workers, you know, workers who we don't usually think of, the ones who are really getting us through the pandemic, because we don't want to be sitting in a restaurant right now sipping a beer. You know, they're keeping those frontline workers. So in the top middle, enduring power structures of sovereignty, capitalism, scientism, patriarchy, and even modernity generate and perpetuate the environmental crisis while consolidating structural inequalities between the global north and global south. That's Shannon Gibson, international relations scholar. In the middle here on the bottom, I added a quote from the Blue-Green Alliance, which is a coalition of labor and environmental groups. This was started by the Blue-Green Alliance and the Sierra Club in 2006. BGA's core beliefs is that the just transition is not about just about giving people money. Just transition needs to mean there's direct help to people who lose their jobs along with an economic development plan. This is something we don't always think about, right? When we're creating jobs, who's losing jobs? We shut down a coal plant, a utility. You know, what does that do to the tax base of that community, and where are those people going to work after that? The problem in places like Texas and New Orleans is a lot of the most high-paying jobs is those dirty industries, and a lot of those folks are Black folks. I know there are a lot of highly educated Black people who work, you know, with master's degrees for oil companies, right? Because why? They pay the most, and you're trying to get your family out of a bind. The last quote I'm gonna have on this page is Brad Markell from the AFL-CIO. He said, workers who have well-paying jobs have seen the changes, and the working class feels it's gotten the short end of the stick. Holding on to a fossil fuel job seen as the only way to maintain a decent life for them and their families. They've seen when their friends and family lose their jobs, life is hard. Working people are afraid of change that involves the loss of jobs. I think that's a really good identification of the problem. Also, I think that we need to stop thinking of just white people when we say working class. My mom worked, at least 2 jobs her entire life. She is the working class. Best definition of working class I know, and where I got my work ethic from. So, next slide here. So I wanted to make sure I identify some of the heroes of the environmental justice movement. I've got Hazel Johnson here, Dr. Robert Bullard, Peggy Shepard, and Tom Goldtooth. If you do not know these people, please Google them, learn about the struggles that they have for environmental justice. The reason why I included these images and why we're talking about environmental justice is, in my opinion, environmental justice and labor, and when I say labor, I don't just mean traditional labor unions, I mean working people, wherever they're coming from. I think that those people who are fighting for environmental justice are also concerned with the economic reality that faces the people in their community. We all know these young men and women who are just kind of, inactive. They're in their community and they don't have job prospects. Maybe they don't have the skills that they need to get jobs, but they're incredibly smart, right? But those are also the same people who are double impacted by asthma and all the other illnesses that come from the cumulative impact of having coal plants and things like this in your community. So like that previous project that you saw, where they put that freeway through, those people, I guarantee you, who live near that freeway are dealing with asthma problems and other respiratory issues that come along with it, now compounded by COVID and being extra vulnerable to that as well. Adding those trees and things like that are combating that because they absorb the carbon, right? But I think that you have to think about the cumulative impacts of being economically down and having these health issues, and then a carceral system that locks you up and doesn't consider any of this when it does that. So I just want to show you, at the federal level, I know a lot of times we say what the president does doesn't matter, but what the president does matter. The first executive order for environmental justice is in 1994 by President Clinton. And that was 12898. That's something worth looking up. I'm not an expert on environmental justice, but my wonderful colleague, Sharonda Williams-Tack, I always love to shout her out, help me out with these slides. And just to point out, like, there is a direct link between environmental and economic justice. All right, so these really old school charts that I have, I promise you, like for the left brain, right brain, right? I want to just give you some chops on the economic piece, right? So upper left-hand corner. So it's not a really great looking chart, but it'll do the job. This is representing union membership between 1948 and 2012. Now, the bright blue line that you see here, right? This represents public sector membership. You might hear that sometimes. Public sector membership in the 1960s really exploded and has been consistent to this day. That's why it's been a really serious target for the Republicans for the Supreme Court. You may have seen the Janus case. Public sector unions are always under attack. Now, keep in mind, our public sector workers are people who deliver our sanitation, right? Take out that trash, that you don't want smelling up your block. These are people who are the public workers, right? The people that we rely on for all of our services. And luckily, the labor movement has been very strong there and able to resist. But it is like the last bastion of really strong, high density union membership. And it's, this stops at 2010, but if they continue to be pretty consistent, decrease a little bit, but be mostly consistent. The black line here is private sector membership, which has consistently declined since around the 1970s. That's when the all-out war on union membership started, kicked off. We had Supreme Court Justice writing a memo, the Powell memo, which was about attacking unions everywhere in public life, education, at the higher education colleges, lower education schools, media, and it's been a coordinated attack since then. And, just really quick, 1935 was the National Labor Relations Act, which was meant to kind of tamp down some of the fire that was happening, literal fire that was happening in the streets because workers were organizing and fighting and striking for equal rights. You had Black and white workers collaborating in a lot of cases. Well, the idea was if we can turn these workers against each other, turn the public against them, then we can decrease the union movement. And that's happened. The overall movement has declined as a result of the decline in private sector membership. And that's what the blue dotted line is. The next one over to the right, if you think about it, this one's from around 1918 and 2008. The red line is the share of income going to the top 10%. We all know that that's steadily increased. And what I'm arguing is that there's a correlation between decrease in union membership and the increase in wealth by the top 1%. The blue line represents union membership, so they're directly inverse. I mean, there's a number of factors contributing to that. Outsourcing, deregulation of the trucking industry and other industries, but union membership is directly impacted by these things that basically put workers on defense. You may have seen Prop 22 in California was passed. Uber, Lyft, all these these gig companies put a lot of money in to confuse people on what that legislation would do. Well, what that legislation did was it makes it very difficult for these workers to get benefits from these companies. So on the bottom left-hand corner, you see manufacturing from 1939 to 2009, steady decline. These are jobs that used to be in Baltimore, New Orleans. I mean, these are like the American job that brought a lot of Black folks and a lot of other folks into the middle class. Now those jobs are in places that have very weak labor laws, in places like China. Honda, Apple products, they're all made in China, very low labor regulation. And when the regulation comes to China, they'll move it to another place. This is the way that it works. Bottom right-hand corner, productivity versus real wages. This is to take on that argument that American workers and Black workers are lazy. There has been a consistent increase in productivity over the last 50, 60 years, but real wages have been stagnant. So these are just what I use to show folks, that we need to be thinking about these things. What are we doing for our workers, and how are we legislating, protecting them, and what is the system doing to hurt us? So this image here, this is a very, very famous image. And I just wanted to make the point, the American South before the Civil War was a low wage, actually no wage anchor to the first global production chain. When we have conversations about industry and American jobs and Latino workers, it's really funny how we conveniently forget that the entire system of economy was based off of exploitation of labor. The majority of slaves went to the Caribbean. They went to Cuba, they went to Dominican Republic and Brazil. I believe Brazil was the greatest importer of slaves. And in New Orleans, it directly shaped the look and feel of these places, the culture, the music, the food, the infrastructure, all that stuff, but we never go that far in history, right? Except for if we're talking about how the Confederate flag is our legacy. So I just want to point out that a really important thing for us to think about is we have to look at the past in industry to think about what we want the future to be or to not be. Just like that bridge that you saw, that takes historical insight to say, we know that exploitation destroyed our neighborhood, so now we're going to use that same tool to rebuild it. So this is identifying what we call white lash. Right after slavery ended, we had Reconstruction, which was an honest effort by Black and white folks to rebuild the South, right? And fulfill the promise to Black people. January 1st, 1863 to March 31st, 1877 was a period of Reconstruction. It's worth reading W.B. Du Bois, of course, The Souls of Black Folks, but the Reconstruction is the book that details that, guess what? There were a lot of Black men standing around back then as well, unemployed, and that's just continued over the years. So guess what? We're owed the fulfillment of that promise. This isn't something that we're just making up. Reparations is like long overdue. We had Black senators back then. That's what that picture on the left is, the first colored senators and representatives. What do we have immediately after that? White lash. And this is a riot photo from Memphis, Tennessee. So I would argue that the election of President Barack Obama led to the election of Donald Trump, right? And by the way, I did this before Donald Trump was elected. And I used to do this and people would look at me so crazy, like, why are you putting that in your slide, right? And here's another one that I think is very interesting.
They get it now.
Right. If you don't get it now, then I don't know what to tell you. Prison industrial complex, right? It boomed after Trump got elected. Prison stocks slid Tuesday, extending Monday declines after the federal government said it would examine its use of privately managed detention facilities, as during Barack Obama's tenure. You see that big drop in the slides there in the middle. That represents real life understanding by investors that their investment was going to decline. Below, at the bottom, shares in the two largest private prisons jumped sharply the morning after Donald Trump was elected. This is Geo Group. You have to ask yourself why it is. I thought it was because he was going to increase prison population amongst Black folks. I don't know what the numbers say is that, but I can tell you that what I realized was that those investors realized that there was going to be a whole new profit lane, which is immigrant and Latino workers. All right, so economic justice principles. What are the principles we need to think about? We think about local and federal legislation. This woman here making this clothing, she's in prison. a lot of the clothing and things that we use in our daily life is made by prison workers. So I think the point that I want to make here is that if, you know, we all love to talk about the transition to clean energy, right? Oh, you know, the world's going to be fine. We're going to have solar panels. The truth is, if we are not very, very intentional about how that transition happens from top to bottom, from start to finish, and how it impacts our communities, and we're not at the table, then it is going to be as exploitative as possible. We're just going to create another system of exploitation. So we should not be making solar panels in prison, which one company does, right? So think about that. Think about the dichotomy of that. Who's going to be able to get the clean energy? Who's going to be able to afford it? So just really quickly, we don't have to read through these, but quality careers for people employed in clean industry, energy industries, I think that's fair enough. One point I want to make with this week, President-elect Biden met with business leaders like Target and Microsoft and a lot of the top unions in the country, UFCW, representing retail workers and a lot of other workers, SEIU, the AFL-CIO. This is huge. For him to elevate union leaders to the level of business leaders has not happened in a long time, y'all. And 2 days ago, he met with frontline workers, union workers from the nurses union, the teachers union, AFT, firefighters, and I forget the last group. I believe it was nurses, teachers, and firefighters. I may be missing one group, and pardon to those who I forgot. But think about how the president of the United States of America, the next president, sitting with regular people of color and low-income people and working people and having a conversation about what our priorities are. I know a lot of people weren't happy when Biden got elected, not because he's a bad guy, but because they're like, he's not radical enough. But you know what? He's thinking about working people first. That is amazing. And, you know, we're going to have to push him, but he's starting from a good spot, right? So we have a lot to be excited about. Equitable access to clean energy, I think that kind of speaks for itself. Working class and low income people need to have a stake in that, and clean and good green spaces like what we just saw. Affordable clean energy, especially for members of vulnerable communities. And democratic accountability and showing that clean energy industry operates within democratic system safeguards, and in the public interest. Because a lot of times you have utilities making decisions for whole neighborhoods without being elected, and they have so much power, like it's a kingdom.
On that note, could I ask a question of you, Larry? Because we talked about the president-elect and some of the really kind of transformational steps that he's trying to make.
Yes.
But at the same time, I know that there was a bit of an outcry in the environmental justice community around his appointment to, or his proposed appointment to EPA, which is a person who works for, I think it was Dow Chemical, or one of the, big chemical companies, and who has a history of pushing back against legislation or shielding his company from, regulations and those kinds of things.
Right.
What are the ways, since he meaning our president to be, Biden, is, invested in both communities, how do we, lovingly push back? Because we, of course, want the engagement to continue, but how do you infuse the accountability, in a space like that to say, hey, that's maybe not the right person or the right kind of person for a space that's largely about, justice for communities?
That's a great question. I think specifically when it comes to appointments, these are really, there's already that jockeying for positions in the administration, right? And I think that what happens, and I can't speak for the Biden administration, but I think what happens a lot of times is that, Biden can say to his higher level executives, I need you to get somebody good that can get my priorities done. And they're not thinking from an activist lens. They're not thinking from a, Black, empowerment lens. They're just like, oh, I know a person who's been in this industry for long time. They've got the contacts, like, yeah, I'm going to use them, right? And, honestly, I think we need to not make the same mistake that we made with the Obama administration. We really held our fire, and I hate to use the word, in that way, but I think we really held back, and I think we need to push President-elect Biden. I think that he has his ears open, but it's important to think about, yes, who's at the table, but who's not at the table. In that meeting with union leaders, there weren't, that I know of, there wasn't non-traditional alt labor groups. There wasn't the National Black Workers Center and all these groups that should be, you know what I mean? the Oakland Black Worker Center. Like, why don't we have these groups that represent workers who can't be in unions? Because there are a lot of these unions have heavy Black membership, but not Black leadership, right? And I think that, you know, if you're somebody who's from a local community group and you have an interest in this, your organizing is really needed right now. This might be the way for you to get people activated in your community, so you can think about writing a rapid response letter that you want to get to your senator or your local politician and get up there, right? Because that's what they should be looking for. And they know that we got them in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, right? The Black vote, the Black female vote is really what pushed them over the line. So don't misunderstand and discount how much your voice is important in this moment. And something as simple as doing a petition, putting it online, getting it to us, the Sierra Club, and, you know, seeing if we can support you. And if not, we can get you with other people who can. But I think that we need to be thinking about organizing our left in the same way we organize the right. Because if we organized in this way during the Trump administration, what was it going to do? Basically nothing, let's be honest. But, you know, the power springs from the states, and it's going to continue to be that in the Biden administration. I hope that answers your question.
No, absolutely. And that's a great perspective. And Nari and I love action items. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
Yes.
And I would just add to Morgan on the line in terms of an action item. I would definitely make sure that the link is available to the Sierra Club or to Larry, you know, for the call that he just made, that folks can utilize or at least see some of the resources that they have and how they can link up and push these agenda items forward.
Sure thing. I think
you.
so. Let me just say this about Sierra Club. I'm, you know, very honest and direct about, you know, any organization over 100 years has a mixed history, especially when it comes to race. Sierra Club was founded by a white man named John Muir, who was a racist and a eugenicist. And, you know, Sierra Club came out this year and rebuked John Muir, which was big news. I do want to take a little bit of, you know, credit for my union pushing for that. Show and tell, Progressive Workers Union.
Okay, a man after my own heart. That's right. Show it.
I like to walk the talk. I'm actually the first person.
Winning.
And we started that union because, you know, there was an existing union, but the leadership we took over because we understood that as environmental workers, we should be walking the talk. And now, and this is funny, the new leadership, first Neha Matthew, and now this guy named Zach Gertis, they brought in Greenpeace, Union of Concerned Scientists, and 350. And all of these organizations are basically actively organizing. And also, you know, they're building power, because at the end of the day, you have to realize that, you know, just because you're an employee and you may not be the executive of an organization does not mean that your voice doesn't matter, right?
That's right.
Everybody has the legal and human right to be in a union. And there's some variance around being a manager or whatever, but like at the end of the day, it's your right.
Well, and we definitely need to bring you to New Orleans to have some of these conversations, because, you know, we don't have very many unions here, and we certainly don't have them around the hospitality industry where they are most needed. Like, they get stomped out every few years. There's an attempt to unionize that industry, and I mean, and they just are so aggressive in stomping them out. So maybe we can put our heads together on some ways to empower some of those folks in this particular moment to be able to unionize.
Yeah, you know what? The Unite Here is the union that mainly organizes hospitality workers, and we did a wonderful. Actually, I think I have an image, so let me hold that thought to the end. I want to make sure I get to the end so we can get folks back onto their life. So let me just give you a little bit more technical, and I love that this is being recorded. So if folks want to go back, look at the slides, I can send the slides, I can send a link. But target local hires. Why does the work come to our neighborhood in Michigan, Detroit, and Illinois, but then all the workers I see are white and they're all over the age of 50, right? That's like the common stereotypical thing we see. That's not always true anymore, because we have an opportunity to say, okay, maybe we can't say we want 80% to be Black. Maybe that there's some like, you know, log. Well, but we can say that a certain percentage of those workers should come from a certain zip code, right? And that a certain percentage should be women. Women should have these opportunities too, because they have a lot of skill, more skill than men in a lot of cases. The second line here, hinted at that. The percentage of the workers come from certain zip codes for certain median income and below the federal poverty line. You have things like pre-apprenticeships. So people don't know, a lot of communities aren't ready to just jump into a job. Unions, by and far, the reason why we like to encourage working with them, they have a culture of expertise, of training and skills that allows them to transfer that to people who come in, right? So the pre-apprenticeship is supposed to get you ready for the apprenticeship. Do you have a license? Do you need substance abuse counseling? Because we want to impact people who wouldn't even be able to think that they could be in these opportunities. Do they need a ride to the work site? Right? Like things that we as the average worker may not even think about are impacting these people. Is the union way out there in the middle of nowhere, and then the work site is in the city, but they have no way to get out there? These are things that Black folks and brown folks deal with a lot of times and nobody thinks about. Prevailing wage. There's a lot of established law with construction in terms of how wages are supposed to be distributed, especially if they're state funded projects. So EDA grants, like what was talked about before, those things, if you're gonna get that, then you should be paying your folks a certain wage and make sure that they can actually get to the job, right? And then project labor agreements or community benefits agreements are some of what I heard you talking about, basically is getting consultancy from the community. It's really not a difficult thing to do. It may be difficult process-wise, but it's so important. And I loved hearing that in your project. That was really exciting. And then of course, union jobs. Like, I think that this is the moment where the labor movement comes back. We've never had a friendlier president-elect in a long time, and they should be getting paid family-sustaining wages. Every single person at the Sierra Club now makes family-sustaining wages. What does that mean? If they have a child, they have a husband or wife, they're married, they, by the MIT family-sustaining wage calculator, we basically say, where do you live and what are the costs there? And you should be able to sustain yourself. I think we make this too difficult, right? It shouldn't be subjective. Everybody should be able to sustain themselves. I don't think that's too much to ask. All right, so this is like one of the last slides here. So some of the examples of the work we've done, we worked on the power grant. We got the steelworkers, utility workers, the Just Transition Committee, which is a group of regular Black women working in the Detroit, Michigan area. And then Jason Walsh, you see there on the right, was from the Obama administration, but he's now with the Blue Green Alliance, wonderful guy. So you see a bunch of Sierra Club folks and me hiding in the back there, community folks. And this is one of the most polluted zip codes in the country, 48217. And we're like, look, how can we get government money to help us, support communities that are impacted by the loss of coal mining income? And this is a long-term thinking project we have to do, just like what you did with the bridge, to say, how are people being impacted by the loss of these jobs, by the pollution? And then let's come up with an economic plan to fix this. This can be fixed. Our communities don't have to continue to look the way that they do. So I just want to show you that you can work with unions, you can work with community groups and politicians to make this happen. This is the event I was telling you about in New Orleans, right? This is the Just Transition Conference we had. And we had the United Houma Nation, the gentleman in the pink shirt on the left there. We had Peter Tapanier from Unite Here, Tanya Harpo and Laura Akua from Fight for 15. And then lastly, Randall Carroll on the right there from the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. Think about the fact that if we're talking about a new society, we need workers, we need union folks who can have the expertise to build this stuff and how to fight for the right wages. And then yes, we need to include indigenous folks who have a traditional way of life, have a lot to teach us. And one of the most impactful things that gentleman Reuben said was, again, what are we transitioning to? The majority of our life has been about fishing, living off of the land. And now the fish are going away, things are getting poisoned, we're losing land mass. Like, we got to think about other people's reality and when we're talking about these plans. And this is the larger group. And you can see Colette Pichon Battle there, holding court, bringing community together for some really difficult conversation. I don't know, this is really beautiful to me. We had SEIU, it was amazing. And I would love to do something again like this with you folks, maybe when we can get COVID to kick back a little bit, but thinking through how to build our community over time. She's been doing work for a long time. It was our honor to be there. Promise I'm almost.
If I may add, so Imagining America, Asali.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to be hosting Imagine in America here in New Orleans, post COVID, in December of next year. So I think that would be a great opportunity to, explore some of these kinds of conversations we're having now.
New administration, vaccines coming. Let's put our best hope forward that we can beat this thing soon enough. We're gonna beat it. It's just a matter of time. Um, One of the slides I did not include in here that I usually do is, I had a picture of Steve Bannon. Again, this was pre-Trump era, but I don't want to neglect to say that white supremacy is always in the background, and something we need to consider, that as you're doing this organizing, you're going to come across people who don't want to help you simply for the fact that it's going to take away their power. It won't even hurt them, but they feel like they're not going to have complete control. So we're always dealing with that, and we could talk offline, but I got plenty of stories, y'all, within unions, within whatever, but you got to push past that. So just a few examples of collaboration between labor and environmental. You had People's Climate March. These are all Teamsters. You can see by the logo on their shirt, representing out there at the People's Climate March. So yes, union people do care about the environment. Verizon, this is a Verizon strike I had the pleasure of coordinating. We had more Sierra Club people. Those are all Sierra Club local chapter people on the picket line with the Verizon workers. Really amazing. That's how we build power. That's how we win. And then, of course, All Walmart. This was a UFCW thing back in the day, ended up becoming an independent group called All Walmart. They did a lot of things, particularly for Black women and mothers at Walmart were able to get, more paid leave for women who have children. We got to be thinking about these things along the way. This is equity. And then lastly, what are our challenges? What areas can we collaborate? I think we need to be asking ourselves these questions consistently, like the one that you asked a few minutes ago. What can we do to push the Biden administration? Crossing my fingers, we get 2 terms, so 8 years. We can do a lot in 8 years at the local level, and then that serves as an example at the federal level for what works, right? So let's think big. Let's reset our minds, because now we're not going against the opposition every day, but that doesn't mean that we can sleep and that we can rest. We got a lot of organizing to do, and it starts now. Before he's the president, we got to start now. Thank you. And my email, I just threw that up there, Larry Williams Jr., Sierra Club Labor Coordinator. My position will be changing soon, hopefully to Associate Director of Just Transition. But, the work will be much more focused on conversations like this. And I'm very, very blessed to have this conversation with y'all and try to move the needle. Thank you.
Oh, goodness. I mean, you'd have thought I planned it. I couldn't have planned. First of all, let me just offer my gratitude to both Nari and Larry for really responding to a last-minute request to bring this conversation to you all. So I want to acknowledge, that the panel that we planned wasn't able to happen for a couple of reasons. And when our team reached out, late last evening and early this morning, can y'all do this? Not only did they say yes, but decided to vigorously share and advocate and that's what equity is all about, in action, never missing the moment, right, to push for these solutions, to build these networks and collaborations. You'll hear some vacuuming above me, maybe. Ashe also provides affordable housing to artists, so and I live under one. My office is under one. But in any case, I just want to, thank you both for, the passion that you bring to this work. And because as I hear you both talk, my imagination is just jumping with the kinds of things that I see are possible. And that's what is so exciting about bringing culture to this conversation, because it expands the idea of what is possible, for residents and for community. And we only have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to, Morgan, Melinda, if there are any questions out in the Facebook world, put them in the chat for us. But if not, I'm, just going to, yes, thank you, Mark Rodan, excellent, learned a lot. Thanks, important conversation. Yes, thank you, Mark, for adding your energy and for, acknowledging the great work that these folks are doing on the ground. And so if I could just, ask the two of you to close us by saying what you imagine are the possibilities of this kind of work connecting with other communities. So like connecting the solutions that Nairi is working on with the solutions that the folks that in Lamu are working on with, decolonize. Because see, I'm having some thoughts around, how we have the Paris Climate Accord. We can have a New Orleans Equity Accord. You understand? So, what just, really quick, what's the top inspirational thing that has come to you from this conversation?
I can't say top inspirational because so much of what he offered was inspirational. But my pragmatist is thinking when he talked about working with unions and thinking about the mentorship and the TA and kind of entrepreneurship programs, I'm immediately thinking about stuff like Groundwork NOLA and its resiliency initiative, right? And so how do we, yes, get people working in this industry, but how do we organize them around making sure that if they're not working, they're still okay? Are they getting the right benefits and all of those other pieces that I didn't think about? So I think that was a very important piece, to really bring to the table, especially if we're talking about creating a new culture and a new industry in New Orleans. Well, how do we protect it from the start? And so we have young people, thinking about their future work, but how are they thinking about their future lives? Like these young people will be adults, they will be parents. So I want to thank Larry for thinking about how we utilize our relationship with unions in that way and that kind of expertise that they have. So that was very helpful for our future work.
Wow, thank you so much. I appreciate that feedback. I think, to say I'm impressed by the work you've done, Nairi, is an understatement. I just think I've lived in different places around the country, Connecticut, Arizona, Tennessee, bunch of.
I lived in 2 of those. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So and to be straight up with you, they've always been the poorer side of those places until I reached adult life, and so I had to get rid of a lot of imposter syndrome when I bought my first house, and I deserve to live in a safe neighborhood, right? And I think just for the young people watching, I think we tend to have that man, I'm not gonna leave the hood, or it's really fear because you don't know anything outside your square block, and you go to other street, you might be thinking that's dangerous over there, right? For a good reason. Or going downtown is a long way away. But the only way that you understand the world better is by getting outside of your box and seeing something different. And that's why we're killing each other and all these things, is because we only see what's in front of us, and so that we think that we have to fight over it. It's the scarcity mentality, right? But when you beautify the neighborhood and they're able to walk down the street and see something different, it's like, you know what, I do deserve something. I do deserve to live in a nice neighborhood, right? And I don't have to go somewhere else to make the neighborhood nice. I can own what I have right under my feet, and it can be nice. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just thinking about my own mentality and how it's evolved, seeing that. And I guess lastly, I would say one of the most impactful trips I had was to Cuba to see Havana Vieja, old Havana, where they have government program where they literally, the government gives people stipends to move out of their homes, and then they give them jobs fixing their own neighborhood and fixing their own homes, and then they're allowed to move back in, right? Reverse gentrification. So it's like another world, right? But guess what? You just showed that it's possible, and that unfortunately a lot of times we beautify our neighborhood and then we sell it, or we move away or whatever. And I think the way y'all love New Orleans, the way Sherelle Blazer loves New Orleans, it's nah, we stand, and we're gonna make it better and safer and waterproof. So very inspiring. Thank you.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's a perfect note to, you want to say something, Nairi?
I do, because he triggered something in me in terms of, so I love the hood, and I've lived in all different scales of income level environments. But one of the things that I remember when I, was in New Orleans and Treme, and we had a professor who we had known at Vanderbilt who was moving and looking for a home. And, she was like, oh, I don't know if I can move to the Treme. I was like, no, we need people like you in the Treme. Yes, I have a wonderful doll maker on this corner. Kermit Ruffins is next door. We have the jewelry maker right here, Backstreet Museum. Yes, professor, you need to be in this block on this corner, and part of this collective. And so again, you create the community that you want to live in, you know? And so thank you again, Larry, for kind of saying that. No, we don't have to operate from scarcity. We can operate from abundance and from visioning and from creating the environments that we want. So yes, yes, yes.
One of my favorite things I've ever seen in New Orleans that Sherelle told me about is the bee. Literally, it was the inside of my brain on a wall, right? For y'all that don't know, this is like this wonderful artist, you know, his long story, which I don't want to pretend to know the whole story, but he turned a factory into an art gallery of activism. And it just, New Orleans is amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. And oh, yes, New Orleans is amazing, as is all of our communities in our diaspora. And, by linking, our hearts and minds and visions and, finding those common points in our culture that we can use to strengthen, our work in activism is why we're here. We have a 25-year difference in life expectancy between Black New Orleanians and white New Orleanians. And that what you said, Larry, at the end about making our own communities better, that is what we are committed to. A better quality of life, a full and lengthy life. We are raising our children here and we know better, so we're going to do better, and we're determined that our children's life expectancy and our children's quality of life will be increased with the abundance that was evident in this conversation. And so thank you for joining us for this week of Losing Louisiana. We are committed to winning. We are committed to restoring. We will not lose our land. We will not lose our people. We will not lose our culture. And it is by your joining your voice and your heart and your work with us that we will make the reclamation not only possible, but we're going to get it here fast, because we don't have time for a whole nother generation of living like this. So thank you to everybody on the screen. Thank you to everybody who joined us now, and to everyone who will watch this later. Reach out to Nari and to Larry and to me. If you have ideas and thoughts, if you have questions, that is the beauty of this virtual format now. These kinds of presentations don't have to live just in the moment, that we can carry this conversation forward into many more. And I look forward to with you. And I have to give a bit of news, because I promised Nari that I would before we got off the phone. But another collaborative that is a group of marginalized small cultural organizations like the Backstreet Museum, like Le Petit Jazz, like the African American Museum, like the United Homa Nation and the LGBT Archive. We have just been, made a commitment, so we don't get money from our city, right? And most of those folks don't get funding at the federal or the national philanthropic level. And so Ford Foundation has given us a very generous and gracious gift to carry on our work for the next 3 years. And I can't tell you an amount, but it's really, really nice. And only because I haven't shared with those folks yet, but you'll be hearing out soon. But just as a reminder that there are wins on this road to equity, and we're going to keep pushing the case, and we're going to keep making the changes. And thank you everybody for joining us in this fight. And we're bringing Larry to New Orleans, so don't you worry. I know that's going to be some of the questions. Yes, we're going to get him here, and he's going to help us with this blue-green job stuff. He's going to help us with this unionizing the hospitality industry stuff, all of this sustainable tourism. Oh, we're going to do it. So thank you all, and see y'all tomorrow for National Hair Wrap Day.
Thank y'all.